Motoring 2011 on TSN is brought to you by Quaker State, real durable oil, and Michelin, a better way forward.
This is how we began the very first motoring show way back when. And yes, I was driving a Porsche. I had always been a big Porsche fan, and motoring gave me the first opportunity to actually drive one without having to pay for it. So yes, naturally I was smitten. And guess what? I couldn't find anything wrong with the car. So what's my point? Well, we've driven a lot of vehicles since that day, but I'm sure that Graham and Jim would agree with me that every now and then before you drive a new vehicle, you might have the odd preconceived idea, positive or negatively, about this particular car. Doesn't change the result, but hey, it's human nature. So my dilemma this week, I'm about to drive my very first all-electric car. It's the long-awaited and much talked about Nissan Leaf. Could be a short test drive. See, there I go. Haven't even stepped foot in it and I'm already being negative. But hey, how can you be positive and recommend a vehicle that might not get you from A to B and back to A? Isn't that what vehicles are all about? Okay, enough whining. Let's check out the new Nissan Leaf and meet some very smart people who believe this is the future. And at the end of the program, I'll tell you if I'm convinced.
This is the first time I've ever been involved with a fully electric vehicle, a vehicle that has no gas tank, it doesn't use any gasoline, it has no tailpipe. The Nissan Leaf is the first vehicle of this kind I've ever dealt with in almost 40 years. It's important from a corporate point of view to move forward with reducing CO2 emissions, and Mr. Goen, our CEO, made a commitment in our green program that we would do that. So Leaf is demonstrating that that's possible and is fully workable as an everyday driving car.
Ian talks about the fact that the reason they do it is for emissions. And as we've said on the show many times, passenger cars contribute something like 12% to the emission issues in this country. It's 14% in the States. It simply is pointless.
Well, it's kind of an interesting vehicle because obviously it's got a battery and it's got a motor. So from a mechanical point of view, it's quite simple and quite straightforward. But the software that controls the motor is extremely sophisticated to make it feel normal, to make it react to throttle input, to make it drive like a normal car.
The Nissan Leaf is an outstanding technical achievement. I mean, the car does everything it's supposed to do. It's very quick off the line. It rides and drives very, very well.
Nissan Leaf is a unique platform. It was designed from the ground up as an electric vehicle because we knew that was the only way to make it right. If you try to adapt something else and you're trying to make it work, then you're going to compromise the vehicle.
Obviously, a Leaf can only be the typical family second or third car. So you've got to pay $40,000 with $8,000 of my money in Ontario anyway, to drive a third or fourth car because you can't take it in a long trip.
As far as range anxiety goes, 90% of the Canadians travel less than 60 kilometers. So our average range of 160 more than takes care of the everyday usage of an average Canadian.
Now, driving inside this Leaf, well, it's different. When you're driving a hybrid, of course, that engine will kick in. There is no engine in this car. One thing I do like about it, with that electric motor, when you need torque, it is there. In fact, this drives as well as any other vehicle of this size. You almost wish they could put an engine into it. They'd probably sell a lot. However, Nissan made it quite clear there will never be a Leaf with an internal combustion engine under the hood. So from a purely car point of view, it works perfectly. However, range anxiety. If I run out of electricity, I'm walking. Well, they've tried to do a lot of things here to alleviate that anxiety. First of all, when you're about to start on a trip, you can actually find out what your driving range is from where your starting point is. Now that, remember, is only one way. And while you're driving, you can monitor to see just how much further you can go before a charge. But in this case, once you start to put on more demand, as in the climate control, as you can see, your destination range decreases. And if you're a real good eco driver, they actually give you some trees. In fact, there's a global competition to see who can accumulate the most trees. Let's see how I'm doing.
On September 8th, You accumulated 0.0 eco-trees.
Not good.
It starts with a push of a button. It's got telematics to connect you to the world and tell you how efficient you are in driving the vehicle. It has a navigation system. So it's a very well-equipped vehicle, very comfortable vehicle. And as an electric vehicle, Nissan Leaf makes no noise. So when you sit in the vehicle, it's extremely quiet.
As we all know, electric vehicles, hybrids, is all about using less fuel or no fuel, and of course, helping out Mother Nature. Let's not forget, though, that the energy that's going to be expended finding the metals, refining them, shipping them, and so on. However, the big question is, they're predicting that by the year 2020, that we'll have over 500,000 of these batteries on empty. So what are we going to do with them, and how can you have a green car without green recycling?
Well, what's interesting about the Leaf is that not only is it designed from the beginning to use recycled materials, but it's almost fully recyclable at the end of its life. So we use, for example, recycled plastic bottles to make the seat fabrics. The plastic in the bumpers and much of the plastic in the car is made from recycled plastic. And we've gone into an agreement with Sumitomo in terms of recycling and reusing the battery. So we've thought of the whole cycle of production right from the beginning to the end to minimize the CO2 impact, minimize the impact of the entire vehicle on the environment. This is a real car. It's not an experiment or a test on our part. As it was designed as an electric vehicle right from the beginning, it was also designed to meet all of Nissan's performance standards. And importantly, it is a top safety pick and a 5-star safety rating. So again, there was no compromise in the design of this vehicle just because it's electric. Electric is simply a plus in terms of everything else the vehicle offers.
Electric cars are the next big thing, and they always will be. The two-word phrase that's going to improve your driving and maybe your sex life. That's later on Kenzie's Corner.
It's being billed as Canada's most affordable mid-size car. It's also the most powerful. On this edition of Test Drive, the Chrysler 200. To say the Chrysler 200's imported from Detroit commercial, which starred rapper Eminem, caused a little controversy is an understatement. Thankfully, it turned out to be a tempest in a teacup that left some politicos asking what was wrong with Made in America. If hackneyed is where you're at, then there's nothing wrong with it. Chrysler, like the once proud home of Motown and the American auto industry, is making a serious comeback. In the past, I've always thought Chrysler interiors were, to be quite frank, crappy. This 200, it takes a huge step forward. For example, the crash pad is very nice material, the instrumentation is clean and uncluttered, and there's a very, very nice analog clock that sits at the top of the center stack. And if you go with the limited edition, well, you get a ton of equipment. There is, however, one thing that really does mar the overall execution. This piece right here, and on the door pulls, well, it's already shiny, and this is a low mileage car. Now, when you've got leather seats, it becomes so blatantly obvious that this is vinyl, and very tacky vinyl at that. The limited tested featured Chrysler's sweet 3.6-litre Pentastar V6. It is this engine that makes the 200 the most powerful in the mid-size segment. It pushes 283 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque at 4,400 RPM. To say this puts some spring in the 200 step is again an understatement. Normally, when a car offers a choice of a 4-cylinder or a V6 engine, picking the V6 comes with a penalty: fuel economy. Well, on this Chrysler 200, there's a very refreshing change. If you do pick the V6, you get 110 extra horsepower. However, the highway fuel economy, it only goes up by 0.4 litres per 100 kilometres. Now that's what you call having your cake and eating it too. Another area of improvement is found in the suspension. It has been reworked to take the harshness out of it without making the 200 feel like an armchair. In fact, it's not pushing things to describe the 200 as being sharp to the feel. The recalibrated steering follows this lead. The on-center feel is poised, and when turned into a corner, the feel is both linear and predictable. Now that I did not expect. Any mid-sized sedan worth its salt has got to have some space. When you look at this 200, there is plenty of space back here for two adults to sit in complete comfort. And when you get around to the back end here, you'll find a nice large trunk. 14 cubic feet or 385 litres, split folding rear seat backs, a ski pass-through, nice large opening, and these cantilever hinges. They mean that when the trunk is packed, you don't crush anything. So what's the hang-up? No handle. The Limited's upsized 18-inch wheels and 225/50 tyres then add some extra sharpness to the overall dynamics. The one thing I did not care for was the rather wooden feel to the brake pedal. The system does deliver short stops, but it takes a lot of pedal pressure to get the desired reaction. The rework of this Chrysler 200 has been done exceptionally well indeed, especially if you look at the V6 model. In fact, the V6 is so good, it basically makes the four-cylinder model redundant unless you're shopping on a tight budget. As for the interior, a marked step forward, although I wish they'd get rid of that cheap vinyl. Time to update our long-term Chevy Cruze Eco. With the Eco 6-speed manual, the car achieves 4.6 liters per 100 kilometers, which, according to Natural Resources Canada, is the best highway consumption among all gasoline-powered non-hybrid vehicles. Now, our test car is equipped with the automatic, which should be the volume seller. It's rated at 5.1 liters per 100 highway. Now, I haven't been achieving this at this early stage, but I must take responsibility, because in the end, driving habits ultimately dictate your fuel economy in any vehicle. And lately, I've been checking out the performance, as in putting my foot into it. The interior, like many GM products today, is very nice, with plenty of room for 4 adults. Speaking of room, one of the things I like about this Cruze is that, unlike a hybrid vehicle, you've got lots of room in the trunk. The reason you don't have to deal with the hybrid battery. Now, along with these 60/40 split folding seats, you've got 15 cubic feet of space in here. So unlike at least one hybrid manufacturer, this car doesn't have to come with a diagram to show you how to pack 4 sets of golf clubs.
See that? Even here at the car show, they got their signals on. So out on the highway, my question is, what's wrong with you? Want to see what I got to say about it? Go to motoringtv.com.
They don't have a hatchback because there's a Honda Fit. If they put a hatchback there, they'll kill the Fit. You know what? I think I'd rather have a Civic hatchback, price it right, and it would take the market.
You know, I've been chasing fire trucks all my life. In fact, my brother is a firefighter in Ottawa. And you know, firefighters probably go to more car crashes these days than they do actual fires. And although they get a lot of training, they're well aware of the fact that these modern vehicles have a lot of stuff inside them that's not good for you. So, okay, now we've got a Leaf with a 600-pound battery in it, and it's been T-boned at an intersection. Well, Nissan has thought about that, and they've included an emergency shut-off switch that will shut the entire system down. So there you go. All right, let's head to the garage and join Bill Gardiner.
Hey Brad, how about a Leaf joke, as in Toronto Maple Leafs, not Nissan Leaf? And that is, what do the Leafs and the Titanic have in common? Well, the answer is, they both look good till they hit the ice. Now I can hear you guys all groaning out there. It's pretty corny, but maybe a little too early to start picking on the Leafs too, so I'm probably gonna take some flack over this one. But what I wanna talk about this week is how certain engines have totally revamped, revolutionized, turned upside down certain cars in the last couple of years. I mean, it's just amazing. It's really good news stories for me as an engine guy, and you know, really enjoying powerful cars that get good fuel economy and good drivability. Look at some of these new engines in the last couple of years. Hyundai and Kia with their Theta 2 2.4 liter direct injection engine. If you've driven a Hyundai Sonata or a Kia Optima with that engine in it, you won't believe the power it's got for a 4-cylinder engine, the gearing it can pull. I mean, you get on the highway and you look at the tachometer versus the road speed and feel the muscle that engine's got even at low RPM. It's hard to believe. And phenomenal fuel economy. It's like you can have the best of both worlds. Other vehicles, other perfect examples, the Ford pickups with the EcoBoost 3.5 twin turbo V6, amazing engine. I mean, you have to drive it to believe it, literally. And a whole bunch of Chrysler vehicles have got this new Pentastar 3.6 V6. It has completely changed the complexion of many of those vehicles, the way they drive. The minivans now, with this Pentastar engine, 283 horsepower and 36 miles per gallon highway. Power and fuel economy in a big vehicle. It's just unbelievable. Great news. I've driven the Grand Cherokee with the Pentastar. It used to be a vehicle where you really wanted the Hemi engine. The Pentastar just drives fine in the Grand Cherokee. Now, Brad was just reading an article to me out of Automotive News, and here's why it's a double-edged sword. Ford pickup trucks, the F-150 pickup trucks in the last 3 or 4 months, V6 engines represent 55% of sales. They've outsold the V8s. Now, I would have lost money betting on that one because I never would have thought that it could make that kind of market penetration that quickly, but seems that it has, so shows you what I know. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardiner for Motoring 2011.
The X1 is a very functional vehicle. It offers a lot of versatility. Really, the active lifestyle is the type of customer that the X1 is most fitted for.
We're going to launch with one engine choice. That's the new N20 engine, which is a 2-liter displacement. It's turbocharged. If we look at 3 Series and 5 Series and add up all vehicles with all-wheel drive option, it's accounting for 75% of our sales. So a strong appeal for the X1 is X-Drive. And what's most important is the pricing of the car too, because with a list price of $38,500, even when equipped with the optional premium package, that car is still sub $40,000.
I think that's going to attract a lot of people, but I think you've got to be really careful when you start doing that, because if you look at the options list, if you start ticking boxes, you can get it up to almost 50, I would imagine. So yeah, those people need to be careful, but if you're careful, then you can keep the price down.
I'll be honest, before I jumped into the X1, I had my doubts as to what this car was really going to be like. The engine is fantastic. Doesn't hold back at any point. The response is quick. 0 to 100 in 6.7 seconds. That's faster than the 328i.
I was positively impressed by the car. I find its power is really exceptional. It's a small engine, 2 liters, makes 241 horsepower, 258 pound-foot of torque. You can really feel it when you put your foot on the accelerator, and it really zips along. It had handling to match, and I like that too.
Now, in my mind, luckily BMW have kept their classic grille on this X1. And you know what? The nose of this car seems to have some traits of almost a bit of the 6 Series, which, if you ask me, isn't a bad thing. This is a pretty good looking nose. Now, one of the fundamental differences between this car and the other 3 models in the X Series is actually how much legroom there is in the back of the car. Now, if you're 6'3" like I am, it can get a wee bit tight in the back. The other difference is how much room there is in the boot of this car, or as you guys like to say, its trunk. Yes, it is smaller than the other X models, but there's still more than enough room in the back of this.
It really offers customers something that has the same space and functionality as a larger SUV would, but without all the bulk and heaviness, both in the physical size, but also in the driving characteristic. It drives much smaller, so it really offers customers a whole new choice that they've never had before.
Closed captioning of Motoring 2011 is brought to you by
Greener, fuel efficient, global. This is Chevrolet Now, driving our world forward.
The 2-word phrase that's going to make you a better driver immediately, so what? So the guy beside you is going to beat you across the intersection when the light turns green? So what? The sun's still going to rise tomorrow. So the guy on the freeway is going to pull in front of you when that lane ends. So what? There's millions of people starving in Africa. So somebody's going to beat me at Targa, Newfoundland. So what? It sure beats doing a double endo at 100 miles an hour into the woods, and I know that from personal experience. So the guy at the shopping mall is going to pull into that parking spot you've been waiting for 10 minutes. So what? We just lost a major Canadian politician to cancer, and a friend of mine was recently diagnosed with acute leukemia. Now, their friends and family, they've got something to worry about. You're out there driving? Take it easy, it's not worth it. Save that blood pressure and that testosterone for when you can really use it, if you catch my drift. I'm Jim KENZIE.
Do you know why you should log on to motoringtv.com right now? Well, the Mentoid can prove that even your city has a red light district, find out what kind of police splits Jim KENZIE would actually like to see happen, and why on earth is Howard Elmer starting a charity for car show models. And if you want to keep up to date with all the latest news from the automotive world, you can now follow us on Twitter at motoringtv, and of course don't forget to join our Facebook family to give us your opinion.
So do I still have a negative opinion of the Nissan Leaf and electric vehicles in general? Well, this car is what it is. And I said off the top, the biggest challenge with all electric is, of course, you run out of gas, electricity, you're walking. Although Nissan will throw in a free tow. Having said that, it's a great little car, as good as any other mid-sized vehicle on the market. It's comfortable, lots of space inside, lots of luggage space, and it's very peppy. So hats off to Nissan and the people who designed and built this vehicle. It truly is the first all-electric plug-in vehicle ready for consumers today. And for some, without a doubt, it's the greenest of all greeny cars. However, let's not forget that electricity has to come from somewhere. Maybe Ontario, which is home to North America's largest coal-fired generating station. Zero emissions? I'm just saying. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
The street cars got 60, 70 more horsepower. I have a CTSV. It's world class. It is an amazing car.
Motoring 2011 on TSN has been brought to you by Quaker State, Real Durable Oil, and Michelin, a better way forward.